Let's take you back to our top story, which is about the US shutdown, which is into its record 37th day, and unprecedented announcement was made just yesterday by the American Transport Secretary that 10% flights, American domestic flights, will be cut. The build-up will be starting Friday at 4%, and then it will build up to 10% in all the 40 high-traffic airports in the US. We have Professor Harshvardhan Pant, Vice President, Observer Research Foundation, to talk about it with us. Good evening to you, Professor Pant. What do you make of this step? How symptomatic is it of the kind of dysfunction that is being seen in the US right now under the Trump administration, and the kind of politics that is playing out in the US Senate and House of Representatives?
I think it's absolutely, it in some ways underscores how far American polity has traveled from those days when it would have been possible for the two sides to sit across the table and come to some sort of a conclusion or come to some sort of a deal on these matters. I mean, shutdowns have happened in the past, but this is quite unprecedented, and this is in some ways the longest that it has already traveled, and we do not see any effort being made at a compromise. I think President Trump is usually presidents lead from the front in trying to resolve these partisan differences, but Mr. Trump thrives on these differences. He thrives on polarization. So I don't think he is going to lead the efforts, and therefore whatever incentive there might be on either side, that is no longer visible, and therefore it is symptomatic of this larger trend in America that we are witnessing, that both sides catering to their base more and more, and the inability of the executive, and in this case Mr. Trump, to bridge those differences.
Now, we've already played out what the Transport Secretary had to say. We've also played part of what Donald Trump had to say to lawmakers at a breakfast meet on Wednesday in the White House, where he said that partly the shutdown is to blame for the kind of performance the Republicans have had in the election, the mayoral election in New York, the much talked about one, and of course the two gubernatorial contests as well. But he also said that the filibuster now needs to be busted. So what does that tell you?
I think that tells us that he is again looking at it from his political perspective, that this should, I mean, all presidents do that and all leaders do that. But in this particular case, I think the idea is that somehow he should have a victory, that he can go to his base and say that, look, despite being under pressure, I gave you this victory. Usually when you have a national crisis of the kind that you are witnessing, where federal employees are getting unpaid, where now flights are being cancelled, where entire administration of airports is being restructured, this is very, very serious. And I think for a country that claims to be a global leader, this is also a problem of perception, that it looks to be complete chaos in the US. No one seems to be in charge, and no one is trying to be in charge. And I think when you have the executive, when you have the president talk about it in ways that he has done, that look, filibuster has to be first taken off the board, because he seems to think that is the problem. Whereas the problem is something more fundamental. The problem is that both his own inability to lead, but also the political climate that exists in Washington at this point, where both sides are unwilling to cede any ground to the other, because that's a compromise is something that you normally expect in democracies, especially when you have a crisis of this kind. But no one seems to be willing to compromise at this point. And without any compromise, without any give and take, no one is there is no end in sight to this problem. So clearly, I think the president is ramping it up in his own way, and of course the elections have played their own part. Now he would be certainly saying that, look, we have to show to the what he calls the Mamdani's victory in New York as the communist victory, that we cannot let communists take over, and so on and so forth. So I think and both sides, the left is also played to the gallery. Mr. Mamdani has also in his victory speech tried to frame Mr. Trump as the great opponent that he wants to tackle. And I think in that somewhere the element of compromise is missing, the bipartisan element is missing, and the ability of the Congress members to come to table is missing, and there seems to be complete lack of leadership, which usually either used to come from the presidency or used to come from the Congress, but no one seems to be making any effort in that direction, at least so far as we can see at this point.
But doesn't the Trump administration and Donald Trump himself see that his strategies, his policies are not having the desired result? Instead, he seems to be resorting to spin doctoring. That's what he did in the interview with Fox, which also was released yesterday, where he even made the claim that fuel has come down, gasoline has come down to $2 a gallon, which is just not the case.
But that's what is happening to American politics, where people are living in their own universes, and the reality is what you want to believe in. It's no longer the facts on the ground. It's something that you can create from thin air, and I think not only, of course, it is very dangerous, but I think that's where the politics is being shaped and molded, and how Mr. Trump has played. Of course, he has played a longish role in this from the very beginning. But now that he's in government and he recognizes the challenges of governance, you would have expected him to be more responsible. But here he is, talking of an election defeat. Of course, these were all blue states. But I think one of the things that comes out from the election victory clearly is people are voting because they are getting economically hurt. The cost of living, the economic crisis that is there in the US has played a large role in the kind of support that the Democrats have got in these elections. But instead of recognizing that, he's still concentrating largely on his base. And if you see his approval ratings, they are the lowest of any US president in history at this point in their careers. So clearly, I think in the larger body politic, it's very clear that his policies are not working. But what he's interested in is not governing from the center. He's interested in governing by pumping up his base, and that's what he cares about, and that's how he has molded the entire Republican Party in his own image. So therefore, there is no pushback from the Republicans themselves at this point, which is again extraordinary. That if you see the numbers, if you see the disapproval ratings, you would expect more of a pushback from the Republicans. But it is not coming because the party is too scared to challenge Mr. Trump. They feel that they are there because of his popularity, which may be partly right. But in the larger scheme of things, that is not going to help the Republicans. And I think till the next midterm elections next year, we will certainly not see any dramatic shift in the political positioning of either Mr. Trump or his Republican Party. But also, I would think that given the victories that Democrats have notched up, we would also not see any appetite for compromise on the Democrat side. So again, we are stuck, and I think Americans are stuck.
And what if there's repudiation of his tariffs down the line from the Supreme Court? There are indications that the Supreme Court, even the conservative, the Chief Justice is skeptical about them as to whether Donald Trump is, constitutionally sound in the use of the Emergency Act.
Well, yes, I think that's everyone is hoping that somehow Supreme Court will make him see some reason on this issue. But I'm very doubtful whether Supreme Court can change his approach to governance, given how far he has traveled and what we know of him so far. So I think while the Supreme Court certainly has made some comments and is likely to, if not challenge, but tweak his approach to tariffs. But he can spin it in so many ways that it's not entirely evident that even a serious rebuke from the Supreme Court or even a serious pushback from the Supreme Court would be enough to propel him in a different direction. And that's a real issue, that institutions and again, we have seen that from the executive, from the Congress, and now from the judiciary. We have seen a kind of obsequiousness that is quite extraordinary, and you know, that perhaps is at the heart of Mr. Trump's popularity also, that he can challenge the existing order in ways that no other president has done. So for MAGA base, perhaps that's what makes him so powerful. But you know, his invincibility, as recent elections have shown, is crumbling. A number of you know, voters, a number of voting blocs that voted for him last time, the Latinos, some, you know, a big constituency from the men of color, for example, they have gone back to the Democrats, and so the warning signs are all there, you know. But I don't know. I wonder whether anyone is listening in White House.
Yes. Well, one battle after another seems to be the theme, which has not been just picked up by Hollywood, but I guess the people seem to be picking it up as well as far as the Trump presidency is concerned. Let's see how things go. Thank you for joining us for the moment, Professor Pant.